Can we all come in and settle down?
Hello, hello, hi, hi. Hello everyone and welcome to C, C Conversation Winter Series 2024. I'm Milind Mahale. I teach at school and I'm moderating this series titled Technological Practices as Riyaz along with my colleague Dipti Binderkar. This conversation series is organized by CCT, which is an outreach program conceived by the School of Environment and Architecture to organize conversations and dialogue in order to engage with larger architectural, artistic, and cultural discursive practices within and outside the city. C Conversation series was started in 2014. It is conducted fortnightly and every semester we curate it around theme which emerges from our current questions and inquiries. For this series of Winter 2024, the conversation are curated around the theme of Riyaz and long durée questions. As a practice, a technological practice, Riyaz involves a rhythmic engagement with the self, the technological material, as well as the world within which the practice is located. For us at C, Riyaz is systematic way of practicing a form of art or a craft with a long-term commitment not just learning it, but also advancing the self and the form of practice in the process. It involves routine, discipline, engagements, isolation, diligence, play, repetitiveness, experimentation, through which one arrives at the struggles with the long durée questions. We explore the questions of practice and Riyaz through conversation with 6 invited practitioners who have been working with different medium across the different geographies. This series is organized by CCT and is partly supported by Urban Center. Urban Center is conceptualized as a collective space. It presents its node of dialogue, ideation, deliberation to carry out research and communicate to urban planning, design, conservation, and sustainable urban development. Today, in this second session of the series, we have Sankalpa with us. Sankalpa is practicing architect and academic. He has been teaching at Faculty of Architecture CEPT University since 2008. He currently holds position of Program Chair for Masters in Architectural Tectonics, MAT at CEPT. He is also co-founder of Thumb Impressions, a collaborative practice involved in design, construction, and detailing. Sankalpa's talk today is revision and repetition of the same. That is, the inhabiting space, which is concern of architecture, is established when the relationship to construction and structure is indistinguishable. Whereas disagreement may surface on the space as the experimental entity, the logic of interaction between force and material remains credible. Riyaz is a discerning practice that identifies the underlying disposition in the relationship between material force and space and plays with it. The pedagogy is a recognize the diversity in approaches but the mastery over the one. He titles it as the pedagogy of the everyday. Welcome, Sankalpa. Today's just quickly about the format of the session. Sankalpa will present around 40 to 60 minutes and then we will open the questions and answer discussions. Also, this session is stream on YouTube channel and those who have joined us, they can post their questions and then chat with, we will collect from them. Welcome, Sankalpa.
Thank you for inviting me. Um, thank, Thanks for your kind presence. It has been long after pandemic that we all are meeting together. Um, I found this uh, title of the talk, which you all had shared, challenging but quite interesting. This talk and the work that I'm trying to do is adding up to a memorial lecture which I'm supposed to do uh, in Pune in Feb. There are two parts to this talk. The first part of the talk is in the form of reading. If you hate to listen, then you'll have to bear with me for some time. And the second part is the visual one. Now, I didn't want to do an extempore when it comes to formally presenting it, so I've written, and you can um, consider it a paradox, but somehow I want to put some disclaimers on what I'll say. So the practice of writing is different from the practice of architecture. They are entirely different knowledge domains. Writing about architecture makes one writer and not an architect. You can be a writer trained as an architect. That's a different discussion. So writing about architecture is the practice in which the readers gets the author's perceived version of the content. To bridge the gap is worth trying. So I'm trying to say very clearly here that there is a distinction between experiencing architecture versus writing about architecture. A poorly constructed sentence may lead the reader astray or be lost in a maze of misleading meanings. Conversely, in a poor worked out architecture, the material will still follow the principles of structure and construction for its stability. There is no scope for slippery meaning, as there is no scope for imagining a brick floating on other brick without eating mushrooms. Today's talk is in two parts, so that the scope of misleading the audience can be averted as much as possible, primarily when the technological practice of architecture is being explained. Let me build a quick historical technological context within which all of us are operating, creating, modifying, rejecting, and improvising the available technology. Throughout history, the architectural milieu in India has predominantly featured many structures constructed utilizing brick and mud mortar, subsequently plastered with lime mortar. The rationale behind this approach was motivated by the optimal allocation of resource and a practical strategy to mitigate erosion of unstabilized mortar. This otherwise could have been averted by using large overhangs, of which we don't find significant examples. Historically, in many parts of India, like the Gangetic Plains or Godavari Delta, traditional dwellings were primarily characterized by their load bearing construction, which often consisted of either load bearing walls or a combination of load bearing walls with timber posts. The resource oriented decision making in construction, widely adopted in previous times, involved the organization of materials according to their availability of resources in different regions. This approach influenced the selection of finishes and sizes for structural elements, offering unique identities. Nevertheless, the advent of cement precipitated a gradual decline in the utilization of lime, a conventional binder until then employed in construction. The rapid setting time of cement and the demand for efficient pace of construction were influential factor in this transition. Over time, improvement in the cement supply chain coupled with policy backing facilitated the widespread availability of cement in the open market, signifying the cessation of bureaucratic controls of license Raj. As a result, the aesthetic qualities of present day architecture have been notably shaped by the imperative for fast construction and cost efficiency, which is a slow and steady departure from the past. The shift to cement and the coming of reinforced cement concrete (RCC) instigated the widespread use of frame construction techniques, and resulted in a fundamental transformation of construction practices. The rapid need for expansion of available space for utilization and commercialization in urban areas post liberalization played a significant role in hastening this transformation. Within the realm of architecture, the imperative to optimize floor space, propelled by market forces, has substantially impacted building design and construction practices. The increase in pressure coincided with the development and widespread implementation of air conditioning technology, which facilitated the design of building with reduced sectional area to outside. Conventional strategies of achieving thermal comfort, such as implementing overhangs, brise soleil, and sectional articulation, have progressively been replaced by alternative approaches. Using glass films as environmental coating materials has become prominent, particularly with the introduction of double or triple glazed openings. This advancement enables architects to achieve optimal indoor temperature with, without solely relying on sectional design strategies. The advent of neoliberal economy has further prompted a substantial shift in spatial practices, especially within the construction domain. Within the economic framework, the significance of land value takes precedence, resulting in the prioritization of swift construction schedules over cost factors. This transition emphasizes the importance of construction speed, leading to a need for creative and advanced technologies designed for efficient building construction. The change in emphasis has a significant influence on the construction elements. With favorable circumstance for mass production and standardization, a range of building components commence being produced in standardized formats. The reliance on conditioned environment in commercial and residential structures has reduced openings to merely visual connectivity. Consequently, in the case of large scale apartment complexes and commercial buildings, the emphasis is placed on creating controlled environments, then focusing on cross ventilation. The prioritization of constantly or the prioritization of constructing tightly sealed air conditioned environments has prompted a reassessment of architectural preferences. This has resulted in the widespread adoption of standardized openings and diminished sectional articulation for climate in the current building process. This transformation exemplifies a multifaceted interaction among market demands, technological advancements, and architectural responses. The transition from conventional approaches to standardized climate controlled settings represents a substantial shift in perspective affecting contemporary structures' visual, social, and its ecological dimensions. Over 2 centuries, India's architectural evolution has been intricately woven with the shifting dynamics of production relationships. These changes have been constantly discussed with the tools and technologies available at each period. Architects and engineers, as the primary creators of spatial representation, have found themselves in continuous loop of response to evolving spatial practices and representational needs. Please forgive me, this I am taking from Henry Lefebvre. If students, if you don't understand, ignore it. Historically, production methods were manual and artisanal. Even when craftsmen created similar elements like windows, each piece bore unique characteristics. This inherent variability added richness to the architectural fabric. However, a paradigm shift occurred with the Industrial Revolution and mass production. Identical products churned out by industries began to dominate the built environment, eroding the distinctive handcrafted nuances of products. Paradoxically, this industrial homogenization also brought a new dimension to spatial representation. The advent of technologies like CNC, computer numerical control, laser cutting machines enables intricate patterns to be etched onto materials like metal um, jalis, walls, etc. Unlike in the past, where the imprecision of manual crafting limited choices of quality and quantity, industrial processes emerged to resolve it and in the process eradicate these limitations. Consequently, the diversity in jali patterns choices expands exponentially. I will suspend the discussion of the advantage of standardization to access quality products in mass compared to the diversity of output the same human skills can do. I will also suspend the discussion that the seed of standardization was always there right from the inception of the evidence of the Stone Age. Curiously, modern industrial processes are slowly moving towards mass customization within a specific range. Now we are in an era of mass customization, though we are in the early era of mass customization again, providing a fusion of uniformity and individuality. This phenomenon is exemplified by the ability to produce varied patterns on metal jali walls through CNC machines, showcasing the intersections of industrial efficiency and design variability. Now, what is happening is that we have come to a point where now you can design and machines can produce, which means that the production process or the industrial production process is slowly completely getting tuned with the design ideas or way the designers work. As the modes of production change with respect to changing economic models, the choice of something other than the everyday aesthetics comes with a tremendous cost of labor and capital. What is happening is that if you want to customize something today, it comes with a very heavy cost today. Industrial precision eradicated the limitation of the past, allowing for intricate and diverse patterns, thus privileging a type of visual language of architecture as against the conventional work of the hand. So now what it has done is it has changed our aesthetic preference. This transformation represents a complex interplay between market demands, technological advancements, and architectural responses. The evolution from traditional methods to standardized production processes and products like CNC based products or air conditioned environments signifies a noteworthy paradigm shift impacting not only the aesthetics but also the functional and environmental aspects of the contemporary buildings. The concept of spatial practice as an outcome of historical forces, actors of representations of transformation like engineers, planners, or architects, and inhabitants of the produced spaces are in constant flux. The inhabitants of spaces constantly modify, appropriate, and adjust to the spaces of representation. Representational spaces offer a clue and content for the representation of space to emerge, influenced by spatial practices. The point to be noted here is that if we assume that the building elements like walls or columns are produced and are as much affected by spatial practices as the representation of spaces, they do not necessarily occupy the same meaning as intended by the author but as appropriated by the user. What we eventually know from all this is that the relationship with the hand is in continuous change. A wall made by hand is work, as per Lefebvre, whereas a wall made by machine is a product. Both are different formats of Riyaz or sadhana. I have used both the terms here because to separate, because the moment we use Riyaz, it comes to music. So what I've done is I've been constantly using the word Riyaz or sadhana. For me, they mean almost the same thing. Okay, though in Riyaz is sometimes used for repetition, and when you use the word sadhana, it does represents a sort of a higher level of practice, but when in the write-up the question of self comes in, to me it means both the same. But the sadhana means that you need a sadhan to practice. Okay, and the same thing you need for Riyaz is an instrument to practice. So Riyaz or sadhana, in my humble opinion, is between drudgery and greed to eliminate various intimate relationships of mastery over the outcomes, which comes with industrial mode when a material engages with the human body. However, we all appreciate how well one handsaw is designed and produced as compared to the other. The bricklaying machine requires operators who run and maintain the machine properly as much as Riyaz or Sadhana as the masons who need to upgrade their hand skills to other skills to sustain and survive. The risk of marginalization and courage to adapt to changing circumstances of technology is as much a Riyaz as their earlier skills of laying brick with hand. Riyaz or sadhana means constant learning to make oneself relevant, or else all other or else all other paths lead to abyss without a rope. Riyaz or sadhana, in its most conventional sense, is a systematic, disciplined, and sustained practice under the guidance of a teacher. Both of them need a tool to practice. In both cases, the tool's purpose is to develop mastery or over the tool, or poetically to be one with the tool. In that state, it is said that the tool reveals its nature, or there is no difference between the two. Is this possible? Is this at all possible? Given that rarely two people may even be, sorry, given that rarely two people may ever be one in their thoughts and actions, how can a person be one with the tool? Or let's say, in the case of humans, they still have the ability to use their various faculties to communicate with each other. What about the tools, which is an object? Is it that the finite clarity of function or use of the tools makes the communication legible, even if the object doesn't literally speak? Is it that the object having its disposition, like a saw, compels the carpenter to cut it in a particular way which may be understood as good as speaking? Is it that one being an inanimate tool makes it easier, unlike humans? Since the saw cannot speak and is made to cut the timber, perhaps talking to each other would merely mean having a technique that cuts the wood most efficiently so that the body engaging with the tool is least stressed with maximum performance. From the tool perspective, it would mean that the tool would last much longer if it's used with proper skills. Of course, in this case, the bias is clear towards ease of human use and durability of the tool. It is also clear that the tool has been made to carry specific functions and uses into considerations. When the saw and the carpenter's body are in perfect relationship, we may come to some empirical conclusion about their performance. For example, it may be compared by giving 30 samples of handsaw to 30 carpenters, each using their own ability. The tool's durability can undoubtedly be measured if the cumulative time for applying the handsaw in all the 30 carpenter cases remains the same. By measuring the effectiveness of carpenter's skills can be compared. Is that all? Or is there something more mysterious than this, given the fact that we are discussing technology, practice, and riyaz? Or is it, or is there something more profound to it that we that my desperate commentary cannot capture? Something waiting to be realized every time a carpenter applies the saw. I will leave it up to you to smile at this ignorance and my inability to describe more than what has already been done. That is, all that we have is material, both organic and inorganic in space. The body and the saw are both made of materials. Yet one is so called sentient being and the other is an insentient. One is aware of the cutting process through training, that is, by practice. The other aids in cutting. By cutting in different ways, one gets the self awareness of better ways of personally handling tools and the outcome. Mastering tools is to master the relationship between the body and the tool. The tool is merely extension of the body, as the tool is itself made by human ingenuity. The movement of the carpenter's body to the saw is a complex mechanical link in which a range of similar movement is possible. The different operating bodies over the tool, based on how each physical body operates, may give a close range of results until an established reference is made. It is challenging to concretize the relationship between the saw and the body anything other than the ease with which the body acts to cut the block of a wood with, with criteria that can be compared and verified. In this sense, if we all are culturally conditioned to see dance as an evolved practice. The maker's body in action is as much a dance expressed through construction. Returning to the example, some carpenters can better handle the same tool made out of the same material and technology as others. Does this make the relationship of each carpenter to their saw different in its most rudimentary sense? I am still trying to figure out. Suppose we use the outcome based framework to find out carpenter's skills based on the outcome of the saw's durability and not on the relationship between the saw and the carpenter or the subjective experience of the act of cutting. In that case, we can measure the straightness or smoothness of the cutting in a given time. Therefore, each carpenter's relationship with the tool reveals an aspect of the relationship between the two in the form of cutting quality. Now, technology the purpose of the technology is to reveal. Martin Heidegger has written an essay on technology in which you can have a look at it. But the idea of something to reveal is not unknown to us. Um, uh, Let me give you a detour here. The fact that uh, in case of India, the philosophical traditions were entangled with the religious tradition or the spiritual traditions. The people who were writing on philosophy, their interest was to write on some kind of a self-fulfillment, whatever you want, or self-realization, whatever you want to put it. So because their focus was on self-realization, nobody wrote anything on, or we don't find a lot of work on philosophy of technology, which also means that over a period of time, what all of us need to do is to go back and rewrite, not from the spiritual point of view, but from a technical point of view. What could that philosophy like? If you look at the Vedic text, Upanishads are the philosophical discourse about it. Okay, whereas in Europe you find there was a very strong tradition of writing, critiquing, etc. But sometimes late in some other formats, we'll be able to discuss that. Let me come back. Each manifestation of saw's performance, such as sharpness, cut precision, or cutting duration, reflects its inherent characteristics. When a saw is mechanized, the dynamics between the machine and the wood changes significantly, unlike when a carpenter will cut. During each rotation, the machine remains relatively constant and inert compared to the wood. Wood has moisture, it has different grain characteristics. This relationship is influenced by the factors such as varying granular properties and moisture content of different pieces of wood, or different species. Unlike steel, which has a more predictable and measurable behavior, organic materials like wood have inherent characteristics that contribute to unpredictability in their interaction with mechanical tools. This distinction emphasizes the dynamic and nuanced nature of working with organic material as opposed to industrially produced material such as steel. In the above case, the carpenter will still handle the wood, but if they are using miter saw, etc., and press or push timber for cutting, if you are using a band saw or something, you'll have to push it. When a carpenter transitions to an automated cutting process where their primary role is to operate the CAD CAM system rather than physical cutting, the relationship between the artisan and the wood changes dramatically. Computer aided tools introduce new knowledge to effectively guide the machine through cutting operations. As a result, as the relationship between the human body and the tools and techniques for cutting timber changes, the landscape of woodworking technological practices alters and evolves noticeably. This evolution marks a shift from hands on to a more technologically mediated and knowledge centric approach, reflecting changing dynamics at the intersection of craftsmanship or skills embedded in bodily action and technology. No more making is a dance, we discussed in the earlier section. The machine does all the dance. This therefore impacts the relationship between technological practice in relationship to Riyaz and Sadhana in many ways. Firstly, the infusion of technology ensures, Firstly, the infusion of technology ensures a level of predictability and uniformity in the produced outcome. With precision, machines execute tasks without succumbing to external influences, providing users with reliable and standardized products. Secondly, technology integration broadens the horizon of possibility in many ways that manual methods often struggles to achieve. The limitations imposed by physical dexterity are transcended, allowing for a more extensive exploration of creative avenues. This departure from traditional constraints opens up new dimensions for users to navigate within their practices. However, this evolution is not without its challenges. The third facet involves the potential redundancy of specific skills. As technology advances, specific manual proficiencies become obsolete, displacing skills and needing individuals to adapt to emerging demands. Lastly, the transformation extends beyond the physical act of creation to the manner in which we gain knowledge. The shift from hands on, tactile experience to a more cerebral and passive interaction with material marks a significant departure. The process evolves from direct handling to a reliance on technology, altering how individuals engage with and understand the materials they work with. Last 2 minutes. In the various descriptions provided, a constant thread emerges. The human intention to master the act of creation, the concerted efforts directed towards that goal, and the demand for newer skills. These, uh, when these three criteria are met, it raises questions on the enduring attitude of Riyaz or sadhana, despite changes in tools and technology. A practice is supposed to elevate from one state to another. This is so because it allows to discover the same in different ways, either to reveal its unseen potential or to gain a skill almost flawless in doing the same, like putting one brick over another all their life in a lifetime. So the intimate relationship with hand cannot be a sentimental one. As I mentioned earlier, hand is a tool. It is a device to work with other device. In a technological practice, the hand is as much part of the tool as the handsaw or miter saw as an extension of the hand. So that completes the first part. Um, um, 2 minutes breather and we'll do the second part, which would be okay. The purpose of the first part to sort of no, it's on. Okay, the second part is where I have put the work. Um, I will talk less. Um, there are a couple of ways in which you can see that um, it's all architectural work that we have been doing. At least 6, 7 of them I'll show, but I'll show quickly, and I have picked up um, a kind of drawing which I think can best thematically go in tune with what I have tried to explain or what I intend to show you. Um, so don't expect long description of any project. So I'll pick up specific things of that project to explain you. Okay, so this project, what I'm showing, I'm not showing any academic work. All what I'm showing is the practice that we have been doing. We run a collaborative practice of with 4 partners. Um, Manu is an engineer, rest 3 of us are architects, and now we have almost practiced for 10 years. um, whatever we have struggled so far. We have got so far three active wings of thumb impression design, thumb impressions furniture, and thumb impressions build. The build and the furniture wing I'll not show you because it will take another time. So I've just put the architecture work for you. At a broader level, all of us are deeply interested in making. We know how to make things. We can use tools to make. So that's the common thread between uh, all of us. Look, can architecture be without a program? Can architecture be without a program? Can you do architecture without any meaning? Okay. Now, the way we approach architecture and I'm being very specific here, is that we think that once or our hypothesis is that a good architecture is where the relationship between structure, construction, and program is so well woven that they are indistinguishable. Now it's very difficult to find out how to verify that which is indistinguishable. Okay. Now, out of which I want to distinguish here the relationship uh, between structure and construction to the program. Now, if you look at from the knowledge point of view, what we have always read is that there is a textbook of structure and there is a textbook of construction. There is a discipline of structure, there is a discipline of construction. Now, most of the time, they are not the same people who are teaching, or in some case you may be, but most of the cases you may not be there. Because there is a different discipline that is being operated. But for example, if you look at this wall, can you differentiate between what is structure and what is material? Let's say, for example, if you are putting a brick over another brick, okay, if the brick that you are laying falls, what does that mean? It means that there is an imbalance. There is some issue with you are not able to balance the CG, and therefore when you are keeping it, it doesn't balance, it falls. So the body of the maker is also the body of the person who experiences structure through making. They are one, they are not different. Because if they fall, if for example it falls, it is not structural because it doesn't follow the principle of structure. So, so what is important for us to understand is that when a mason starts working, their body is also the body of both together. But for our own knowledge perspective, we have separated out because we study in a studio environment where we say this is structure and this is construction. Whenever the relationship between structure and construction comes, it is far more easier than when the program comes. Okay, because when the program comes, there are far more demands that you have to sort of fulfill. The result of which you will often find is that the term I was discussing with Anuj we use is that now let's set the grid. If you have worked in office, they'll say that let's set the structural grid. Okay, because the structural grid is less important than the organizational demand for which you are sort of working. Okay, and so to have this indistinguishable is a very difficult job. Um, in this presentation, I have not put a single plan. The purpose of not putting a single plan is that I don't want to right now discuss the problem with the plan in relationship to the structure. Because the problem of the plan in relationship to the structure comes when you start thinking about not only organization but also the bearing capacity of the plan, because in plan you see walls and columns. So so just for this presentation I have suspended it, because the moment we get into discussion of the plan, I'll be compelled to get into discussion of type, which I want to avoid it for some time. So, so continuous practice is supposed to make the relationship between the three indistinguishable. Um, when you are looking at what we are doing it, there are three things what is happening you need to imagine. Materials are dispersed and achieve their most structurally stable place and configuration in the way they are dispersed. That's what I said when I was explaining you the brick. It's up to us to pick the most suitable one. The relationship between material and structural forces are simultaneous and indistinguishable. I can also get into the argument that they are separate, but once if you ask that kind of a question. The relationship of material structure to program is the key struggle. One of the biggest, it's not so much the struggle with the structure to construction as much for us is the struggle with the program. Volumes as a dispersal of material that forms elements that are structured. So obviously what we are trying to do is we think that the structure should reveal, which means we need materials which helps us to sort of reveal that, and also it helps to support the program. So this is the project which we did. It's called Yogshala. It's around 24 meters span. Uh, it is this space is supposed to be used for performance of yoga. Um, okay. Now there are few projects in bamboo, so let me explain you the material little bit to get you. Bamboo is a fiber. The it's a linear fiber. The the bonding between two fibers in bamboo is made out of lignin, which is weak, unlike timber or unlike steel. So what it does is whenever you are trying to handle bamboo and whenever you will drill it, you will realize that every time you drill it, it will split. Or if you apply large forces, it will split. Okay, but the fibrous characteristics of the bamboo in terms of its tensile property is very high. But what happens is that before you are able to actually use the full potential of the tensile nature of the bamboo, the joinery will fail. So unless and until you don't design a joinery that that will not take the full potential of the bamboo of the tensile property, you will never be able to use optimized bamboo. That's one. Second, bamboo has low modulus of elasticity. When a material has low modulus of elasticity, you will find that the material will not come back to the same position very easily. So, to imagine spanning in bamboo to be straight is very difficult. Okay, so for example, in India, if you are going to span Indian species of let's say around 70 mm, if you are going to span more than 1.5 meters, I'm saying single piece, after 6-7 months you will see sagging. Okay, that is because of the low modulus of elasticity. Now, across the world, you will find uh, all architecture, whatever you have been impressed when it comes to bamboo, using forms which are in compression, which means you will find that forms which has got curvature. The purpose of the curvature is to overcome the low modulus of elasticity. The other way to overcome is to bundle it. Okay, now how it is different from timber? It is different from timber because timber has got fiber in both the direction. Okay, obviously it is not as good as steel. What we call the property is an isotropic property. So timber, so I am giving you a comparison. So timber, for example, would perform far better in both the direction um, as compared to bamboo. And then steel is an isotropic property. So steel mediates all organic material. Why do you use steel with organic material? Because steel you can do in XYZ axis, its performance is same. The only thing you have to take care about is that if it is in bending wear, depth, section size, profiles, etc. Having said that, so this is almost a straight form, okay. And the only thing what we did was we slightly cambered it, but so okay. Now let me go back and explain you a little bit. So it is made out of two components. The first component is this curve. Okay. So it's what you want to call it like a truss. and the second component is an independent arch. Now, after some time, if you make something straight in bamboo, it will sag. So, the redundancy here is designed through the compression member. I'll explain you later once I'll show you the next project. I'm only explaining you the tectonics part of it. And so these are some of the details, and I'm showing you in the sequence in which we work. The moment we conceived that, we got into detailing. Okay, so these are some of the details you can see. Uh, if you have questions, you can ask in Q&A, because I need to give you more insights into other projects. So if you see, these are the details. This is how they are connected. And the intention here is to partially standardize fastener systems in bamboo as a larger idea. Okay, so you find that these are these are these member are compression members. From the top chord of the trusses, you got these members which are coming and resting on the compression. So right now, these members are almost not working. Once the sagging starts happen, let's say after 10 years or whatever years, then this member will start working. So the redundancy is built into the structure to get the poetics. Okay, and so this is what you can see. And this you'll be able to see once you see the. Okay, this is what the views are. Okay, so dispersal of material. Okay, not to restrain the material. Okay, this is the project. I'm sorry, but they have made the sequence wrong. Anyway, okay, this is the project which we did in Serendipity. I'll come back. Let me go to the next one. In the next one, if you see, this is a solid bamboo, and again, because there would be a sagging that would happen. Okay, so the above is hollow bamboo. The curve you see is solid bamboo. We know that the sagging will happen. It is taken care by a bent solid bamboo. Okay, and what it does, this is again a meeting space for an NGO. Uh, so again, what you do is you express it, and obviously then there are other details which are worked out for ventilation. And again, you see attempt to standardize details. Okay, this is the work which we did for Serendipity 2022 when they had asked us to design an installation. Okay, here you will see that the beginning of using of splits. Okay, so these are splits which are used in this installation. This is an important component of it. So if you observe carefully, this is one a part of the bamboo, and this is a split, and they are pinned. So you can calibrate the distance between the two if you are able to, whatever you need to know about it. So you see here, for example, the splits, they are held, and that component. Okay. So they are pulled. Okay, the splits are being pulled, and then they are held by these vertical members. Okay, so pure tension. When you hang it, when you pull it from down and pull it, everything is in tension. So it's a pure tensile structure. Okay, so you see the bent curvature here. There is above, and then this only hangs. This is another work which uh, we have been trying to think how to standardize bamboo for public infrastructure. And so this was one triple ID workshop in Hyderabad where we were invited, and so we tried, and then we demonstrated it later on. Of course, we also participated in the COA competition, yeah, but I don't think they would have noticed that part. Um, so these are again standardized detail. It can work for a range of bamboo. So how it does is something like this. Okay. So you just buy these parts, go and sort of build it whenever you want, you change it. Okay. This is a work where we tried post tensioning in bamboo. This is around 14 meters span. Okay. this is where we failed first time. We had to actually remove this structure. So what happened was, uh, the section is something like this. It's 14 meter, and you look at this. These are post tensioning cables going on inside it. But what happened is that we were not, in spite of all calculations, we were not able to balance it. So there was a 2 inches um, rotation in the structure. Okay, and so we had to remove it. Since then, we have not been able to erect it because obviously, the relationship with the client changes if you fail. This is another R&D. This is a new. I would not call it new, but new articulation we have done for Hunarshala roof. Uh, if you see here, we know that, as I said, that the bamboo would sag, the straighter one. So what we have done is we have added a compression member. Then if you look at from here, there is this vertical member which is connecting the rafter, but they don't connect the curve here. They connect from here through a rod. Let me show you a little bit more. This is it's CD. In next 15 days it would be done. But uh, can you see this? So what happens is that this is not connected. So from here it goes to this part, and from there is a tension rod here. So what happens is once it starts sagging, the this rod starts working, which exerts force onto the compression. So there is an indirect path which sort of works and not the direct path. And of course it gives you then the expression and something of this kind. So we've been constantly working to standardize some of these things. You can see the close-up of that. You can see how the details are worked out. So because we know that the diameter of the bamboo will keep changing, we have reduced the width of the plate to such an extent that you will not be noticing now the relationship between the curve and the straight plate. This was an R&D we did with students, uh, where you will see that the post tensioning is happening with the splits in seed. uh, and how does it work? So it works again in a different way. So if you look at it, this is a beam. Okay, forget about in between thing. This is at the back what you see. Right now only see this front. This is a beam with these vertical members like rods, like your stirrups. Now what happens is this member is connected through a tension rod here, and then it is pulled out. There are images I can show you. Okay, so this is that. There is a, do you see the tension rod which goes here and connects here? Okay, there is a rod here which goes and connects here. Okay, this further we worked out for the Serendipity Art Festival, where we further engineered it. I'll show you the images. And then we introduced a new component where we use the parametric, um, um, the parametric design to get the curve. Now, what you need to understand here is that you cannot twist bamboo splits. You have to twist over a large range. So unless and until you will not be able to get what is the length to which you will be twisting it, you will not be able to get the form correct. Okay. So it is sort of parametrically generated, and I have worked on this with my students earlier. You will see at all levels there is some degree of pushing the boundary of how the bamboo needs to behave. Okay, so these are some of the images. There is a bamboo here, and this curve which you see weaving is basically strengthening this bamboo by inner connection. Okay, so that's an indirect way to do it. This is the rod, this is the post tensioning. Okay, this is from where it starts. This is the end connection. These are all the details. Okay, these are the parts, how they are made. This is the end detail. This is the lower portion. You can see this portion is cut in order to make the spanning member. Okay, this is a small project which we did. Again, the intention of the project is to show you that when the project is small, what we have done here is that instead of using beams, etc., we have used flat slabs. Okay, so what you do is when you use flat slab, within a tighter space, you are able to articulate uh, light much better, and of course you can work with sections much better. So it's around 5.2 meter by around 10 or 10.5 meters. Yeah. And then if you, what happens in the section is that there is a staircase in the center, and then you try and build relationship as much as possible. Okay, so you see some of the relationships, and then from the other side you get the light. This is a project. I have a old image. Right now, it's complete. It's a masala factory building. Um, it's done by a very low budget. So we tried and do as much as possible within that. Again, coming together of industrial and natural material. So the depth is managed by, if you see, a flitch plate. Okay, but the plate is sort of curved. Okay, and then there are stiffeners which you can see here. Okay, and then there are these bolts done by Azad Bhai, and so you can see. So we are still in the process. It's still in the process of completion. Once it is complete, we'll be able to share. This is again another work which we did, where again you can see dispersal of material. Okay. This is a new project which we have done, which is a restaurant project. The brief was that they needed to dismantle it after 10 years. So we wanted to ensure that the recycle value of all the materials are high. Okay, so this is in Surat. If you see, it is made out of perforated sheet metal, which are sort of stiffened, and then this is just a minimal rod which is there to avert lateral buckling. Okay, and so you can see these relationships. And you can see here, you can see this was the public edge, and the client was little uncomfortable opening up fully. So we tried and open up as much as possible to ensure that the inside-outside connection remains as an urban gesture. But in the night, the idea was that it sort of comes out. So you can see relationship from outside to inside. Okay, these are the details. This is what you will see in the evening, and this is the night. So it just lights out. Okay, you can see this from inside. These are the credits, and thank you. I think I'm on time.
Uh, thank you, Sankalpa, for a very interesting uh, talk and projects. I hope there is a lot of questions. And to begin with, I have one. Um, it's always very interesting to see the projects which are built and then it has conceived and you talk about it. But my part remains with the pedagogical understanding. How do you teach this to a students? Means how do you make aware them of phenomenology of the force or the material? What is your take on that?
In 2014, when in 2014 when Ayaz and myself we were teaching construction, uh, we realized that the students in 2014 were different from what we had witnessed in 10, 11, 12. There was substantial difference because by that time many students had mobile phones, and they spent ample amount of time. And you know that you generally people are not interested in construction in an architecture school, and it's very painful to make students interested, okay, in lot of ways. And I hope that if you have taught construction, uh, you will agree with me that it's a difficult job to do it, partly because we have also not been able to crack how to get creative students engaged in the process of construction, and partly also because students come with their own intentions about how to take technical courses. But 2014, we realized that all our drawing methods and all these things were not working. So I requested Ayaz, and that time I had already come from the side. I had requested Ayaz that let's do one thing. Uh, I think 2014, nahi, 2012. I think 2012. I asked Ayaz that let's develop all kinds of exercises which are related to making, because if you are cutting something, you will either cut your finger or cut the paper properly. There is no other way, which means that at least there will be a pedagogical scope of focus. Okay, and that is when we shifted the whole way of, or at least I shifted the whole way of engaging with the students, which I also continued in the studio. So in the studio, a large part of my working is related to making and doing modeling experiments. Now, modeling experiments means that experiments where students use paper, thread, and things of those kind to engage with uh, with how to strengthen a weaker material. Now, to strengthen a stronger material, or for example, when we are making materials or models with stiffer materials, you don't have to use your intelligence. The moment I ask you to make using thread and using weaker materials, even the walls will not stand properly. What it means is that we have the change in geometry. For architects, this is the term that I use. The change in geometry is the reflection of how failure will happen in that geometry. Okay, so instead of saying that there is a for failure by compression tension, this is how the failure will happen, which means the change distortion in geometry is how the failure will happen. And so because you are engaging in the process of making and observing and modifying on your own, there's an embodied um, knowledge that builds up because it is not based on theorizing it. So, so which means that I'm only engaging at critical points to explain, okay, this is compression, this is how it is working, this is how it is working. So most of the times there is a silent relationship between the work to the students, and I'm just witnessing it. So that pedagogy has worked so far. So, I mean, work so far, I will not know. Work so far, how do I know it? I mean, we'll know it after 10 years when students comes and say that it made sense. So maybe I would say that I think it may work, but I don't know whether it works or not.
Um, so there's this very close relationship between practice for an individual when you're engaged into your own work and experiments. Like you've been working with a team for 10 years now. You've been doing experiments and working through projects, and those projects would fail or those kind of bring in new learnings. And these, in some ways, uh, can be brought together when you are entering into a classroom and teaching your students. And like you said that, like the nature of students have changed. The students who were there in 2010 are much different than in 2024 maybe. And in the classroom is right now, the current way in which we engage with the students is almost like co-learning or collaborating with them. So the question which I would like to ask, or rather know from you, is: are there any particular questions which emerged in the studio, in the classroom, which made you look differently at the projects which you did, or made you or formulated new questions for you which you took back into your practice, and uh, like it's a vice versa.
See, I can respond only from my point of view. I will not be able to respond from how other people think. Um, I always felt that I'm a reluctant academic, um, and I, for me, teaching is not a change. Um, it is same as sort of practicing, and I really don't come. I don't go to practice for a change, or neither I go to teaching for a change. Though they are different things, at a foundational level, they are all same. And how they are same, I have felt that um, now again I'm using, and this is my personal view. I always had deep interest in nature of things. Um, what is the nature of things? Nature is too abstract a term, and over a period of time, the only thing which could anchor me was structures, because the structural forces um, were measurable but were imaginary. Because they were measurable and they were imaginary, for me it was a big anchor to sort of work at that plane. And if you work, I realized that because working at that plane, what it does is then the practice and this becomes same. But the the practice also requires a, a way in which one curates the practice, because we have been also conscious as to how do we curate our practice to practice the way we want. It is not same as by saying that we don't get this kind of work, we don't get this kind of work because we don't want this kind of work. So, for example, I want a high-rise building desperately to sort of do it, a commercial building. Right now, I am not mentally prepared for a apartment building in high-rise, because for me the question of type uh, lingers, because as structure is essence, type is essence, and um, and those two are anchorage for me. No, I'm not doing it, and neither I'm taking studio, because what I'm realizing is that for let's say high rise, for 200 years we are into high rise, not more than that. For thousands of years we are into low rise. So amount of diversity of things that we have done for low rise, we have not done for high rise. So if you go to a high rise building, you will not get complexity of space, you will get cells, utilitarian cells. So in my mind, I'm constantly trying to figure out how do you get complexity of space in a high rise, in a flat kind of situation. And since I don't have any clue, I don't want to use students to explore that. I need one anchor. I can think one or two, but so for me, there is a continuity. There is no difference. So actually, it doesn't happen that from studio I am taking, because because see, it also happens. See, teaching is more difficult than practice, because because every student is different, and if when they are experimenting, what happens is that if you are a good tutor, you are more empathetic to the students, which means that if there are 20 students, you are thinking from 20 different ways, even if you have set the experiment. You are think so, because the point is whether they get it not, you get it not is immaterial. They get it not is important, because we have to think about they get it not, which means for every student I am thinking that okay, after 2 steps what will that person do, after 3 steps what will that person do. So so in that sense, what teaching does, it is far more compelling intellectually, because I think you are far more liberated in practice.
So, you know, I was just, I will, I have a question from the first thought that you spoke. Um, like taking from the proposition that you made on this the individuality and the mass, which kind of becomes it converges at some point in this mass customization era. I mean, furthering that, the material and the body also becomes one, with the example of the saw, the hand saw, and the cutting of the wood, because the saw becomes the medium through which it connects or talks to you. The material, even the metal that vibrates, or the kind of senses you get through that, the machine doesn't. Continuing that, this relationship of the body, like I was just wondering, what is it for the body in this process of making? like like the cutting through the saw, or can we compare it beyond the act of occupation, say the carpenter or maybe the mason, to a more performative sense of joy that maybe a singer or a dancer sort of gets, and connecting it to the sense of riyaz or the sadhana or the sadhan, the tool, uh, and how does it locate itself in the architectural process, like the because there is a certain transition which happens from, say, the imaginer to the maker, or the thinker to the maker, and is this a question of the agency, or like how does, say, one practice think about it? That's one. And to kind of take it a little bit further, is it the relationship that you brought in through the idea of the aesthetics and the precision? Because like it has, like, is it the question of the precision then, or is it the question of the aesthetic then? I don't want to necessarily separate these two, but that was a question for me when, this was being discussed, or the agency through which you achieve the aesthetics. And maybe, like, is that like, where does Riyaz also locate within this, and how does it shape maybe a practice for you? Like, and now, right now, you just mentioned about the academics not being different than, say, your than the projects that you do. So, like, this was like a question for me, and maybe if you can reflect on this, or
Well, see, the thing is, architects being sensitive being there, um, there is a tendency of loss. Okay, and that is why I wanted to point out two things. One, hand as a sentimental thing, and the second is, um, when I was trying to explain, I wanted to explain a person who is most disempowered. A carpenter will not cut on their own because they enjoy it. Okay, which is different from, let's say, dancer. You can still dance whenever you want. You can still sing whenever you want. Okay, so we have to understand, or we have to understand, for that person, what would that be? Okay, and I was trying to give an example that, look, tomorrow, for tomorrow miter saw has come, day after something else will come, something else will come. They are the one who is most marginalized unless they shift their skills. Okay, now how do you look at that condition? Because all rest of the conditions are far more privileged condition. For us, if it changed to hand to AutoCAD, I didn't see, I mean, I'm a person, people who are in this late mid 90s to early 2000, people who have studied all of them, for them both hand and computer, they were using it. At least I was using both hand and computer. Okay, so but there would be people who would be coming, okay, you have to use hand because you don't get skill. All of these have failed. Okay, still there are better architecture being done. The tools and technologies are changing, which means that what is constant is an attitude to get something. Okay, so today you are using, let's say, not today, let's say 5 years back, 7 years back, you were using SketchUp and models. Model for outside and SketchUp to go inside and detail out things. Okay, So what is happening is that you have got far more dexterity than any other time in the history. And today, with perhaps AI, you will get far more options than any other time in the history. Where is the problem? The, the problem comes when we think that there is a loss. If we think that there is an opportunity every time, then we'll have to constantly adapt to it. Now the only thing is, if you are privileged, you have far more choices than a carpenter. Because let's say a carpenter in 40s, from there they shift to miter, then they shift. So what, unless until they don't become entrepreneur, they will not be able to get some of the stuff. And so what happens is slowly redundancy starts happening. Okay, so what remains to me constant in Riyaz and everything is what is the attitude with which you look at change in tools. So let's say when the miter saw comes, still you see the carpenters go and praying Vishwakarma. The something else come, they still do the same thing. They open a factory, they still do the same thing. They cut it, they still do the same thing. Similarly, there is something constant which we are doing with changing tools. So the point is that repetition or doing same things does not mean you are doing same things, because let's say, if what I wanted to show with the work here, the same bamboo, if you are dealing with it, but you are trying to push yourself to find out, can there be more ways, can there be more ways. So the same bamboo reveals itself in different ways, not because you are some enlightened person, simply because you are doing donkey work, and you are spending far more amount of time in one particular thing. So that's what of thing. If I don't think that hand is a tool, this is also a tool. If I start thinking that no, this is different, I mean, it goes into an abyss, and once you go into that abyss, and if you don't know how to return back, there is no returning back. And we have found out that many of the times all of us have this sometimes tendency to go there. And I've been trying to look at, okay, things have been changing and still you have been seeing better things coming out. Okay, so that is going on in my mind. So how do we reinvent hand? We have to see. I mean, I see, the thing is, instead of working, you are jogging now. You are still using your body. You realize by sitting and doing computation, you will not be able to make your body healthier. Relationship has changed.
But also we make for like ourselves. Like what I also wanted to bring out is like I also make a few things, or maybe with Million, we make a few things with the students by ourselves, and there is the connection there. Like you also make for joy, even though it's not for an occupation, or maybe it's not. That's where the gap between the imaginer or the thinker and the maker, because what it highlights or what it brings out is these kind of gaps or the questions of the aesthetic, because it's an agency that one wishes to make it in a particular way, but is there a dialogue, is there a certain sense of, because it was there in the projects that you were bringing out, like working with bamboo and much more intuitively, like the learning of the structure is more intuitive rather than doing it in, say, a grasshopper script or some other material, because you're sensing that. So this is where I wanted to sort of know how you get into the Riyaz, like how is your relationship with the person who's making it, or the craft person who's involved there.
Okay. See, I think that the craft person is doing their job and doing my job. Now, there are human relationship between the craft person, between the student, between everybody. How do we treat it? How do we approach it? What is our overall attitude to approach it? Okay. Now, uh, see, we have to also understand is that the people whom we are working with have a particular skills which are very good. Okay, but here you are also trying to work with different forms that the skill can give you. Okay, now in which sometimes, so for example, once you make it, like let's say uh, Vasan Bhai is the artisan with which we have done all experimental structure in bamboo. So once we do that experiment and we say that will it work? Uh, Not in the model stage, because model stage they don't understand anything. Once we are putting up that prototype, which we do for all the projects, then we say work karega, then he will sort of say. But it depends on artisan to artisan. What I'm trying to constantly say here is that um, see the I don't necessarily think there is an intuitive process. I personally think that when trying to work for a long period of time and struggling and pushing oneself, you see the same thing in a different way, because our eyes are biased towards the knowledge that we have. It is the way we are constructed it. So for example, all of us are looking at the same object, but we see different. Why? Because we are colored by our knowledge, and our knowledge only gives that much. We don't see everything. We never see totality. So we are never one with it. This whole idea. So that's why I wanted to bring. There is nothing like one with it, because you are different. One of the reasons why I have problem with anthropology, but this is my personal problem. I mean, is the fact that a society worldview or cosmology is of a certain kind. It may be wrong, but you still say that that's the cosmology. So it's unto itself, which may not be the truth. Okay, so I'm, I would not get into the question of agency, but there is an interaction which is very dignified, very respectful. It comes with the joy, it brings it, but there is a lot of residue. So that is why I wanted to present to the students in a, I'm not sure whether I've been able to do it, in a non-romantic way. Because you have to see as things are. Because if we don't see, then there is a problem.
So, I wanted to ask that how does the larger world, including the fields of art and architectural practices, influence and shape your Riyaz? In what ways does the external context impact the way you approach and engage with your chosen medium? And when I say that the larger world, I also question the role of asymmetries and imperfections and unexpected elements that impact your practice of Riyaz. I mean, how do they contribute to the evolution of your work in some way?
Well, I didn't want to touch the words like asymmetry, etc. For the reason that I have not thought from that point of view. So it would be unfair to talk in the direction in which you have not worked. So the purpose of putting it there is to put the areas in which you have worked. Otherwise, it would become, um, you're speaking something but unnecessarily trying to prove that this is what you're doing. As far as externalities are concerned, um, see, what my realization is that there is one area in which my team members may have a different viewpoint, but there is one area in which I wanted to be on the edge of the world. That um, edge of the world means that, okay, there are few things which I have showed you nobody has done in the history. Okay, and if somebody what they, so so which means that I'm also constantly seeing what others are doing. Okay, what it has also done to me as a person, I can say that um, I have tremendous respect when I see somebody doing something nice. Because to get to that level, I know that if I have to achieve something, it takes tremendous effort and a very long time work to sort of do something. So the moment you see in somebody, including students, etc., uh, one is more able to appreciate that. A very deeper appreciation comes in when you see other people doing good. Is what it does, and this is how I sort of look at it.
Hello, hi. I want to extend from what Dushyant was kind of pointing at, where you were talking about a dance that happens between a person who's working with wood. So I wanted to reflect upon my personal kind of an experience. Back in my 10th standard, we had a subject called technical drawing, and we had this half imperial sized board, and we had to draft these small kind of engineering tools. They had punctures and small kind of things. So the way I internalized them back in the day and the way today how we conceptualize larger architectural spaces, it is very different. Like my question is that is there a difference in the consciousness between a mind and the body that happens when these mediums shift, when you start graphite on paper and maybe graphite ka style on Procreate, or how does that like you were talking about that miter joint saw, and how does a person chisel a 45-degree kind of a cut? Is there a difference in the consciousness there that emerges? Maybe we are more precise, but is there a difference in the consciousness that is emerging as practitioners, as designers, or maybe as people who are practicing?
Okay, I don't have any answer for that. Because why I don't have answer, because look, see, consciousness today is a big area of work in the field of science. Um, a lot of scientific work are being done more than it was ever done. Um, and there are various views on consciousness. And because there are various views on consciousness, there are various views on relationship of consciousness to body. Okay, um, or let's say consciousness to the universe. Because uh, uh, so I can tell you that some people think that um, universe is within consciousness. Some people think consciousness is within universe. Some people think consciousness and universe are separate. Uh, some people think um, consciousness and universe are inseparable. Okay. Now, each of the way in which you conceive it, you will articulate your ideas accordingly. It will. So I don't know how are you looking at it. The moment you say that consciousness and universe is separate and they mix, that philosophy is called Sankhya. If you say consciousness is within universe, okay, um, um, then you will have all the material philosophy. Okay, if you say the other way around, you will have all the religious philosophy. Okay, now which means that the relationship of body to the consciousness depends on how you are trained to look at it. So that's why I say I am not capable of answering your question because I don't know how to explain that. I mean, I don't even know is there something called consciousness or not. Okay, or for example, that consciousness emerges through a physical condition. Science says that give us another 50 years, we will prove that that material creates consciousness. Okay, and so these discussions are very difficult to have, and I don't want to have this discussion because one, that I'm not an expert in it, and it may be misleading to you as well if I say something at that and that doesn't make sense to it. So sorry, I cannot answer this question.
You'll hear me? Yeah. Um, Sankalpa, it's always a pleasure to have you at see and hear your talk as well as see your work. Um, um, I have, uh, I really enjoyed both the parts of your presentation. And I have two questions in thinking about what you presented. Um, um, they're questions, but also maybe provocations for your memorial lecture. So my first point is about the analytical framework that you presented of structure, construction, and program, and in kind of and type, which becomes important for you to kind of explore. I'm reminded of one of the points that you had mentioned uh, in a design dissertation symposium at sea. I think it was in 21 or 22, that the detail of structure is not simply the structure which comprises of material, but is also the detail of life. And those words I will never forget. And so I'm kind of wondering that when one sees your work and all the work that you showed in the second part, is there something beyond the unity of force and form in the structure and construction and the type? Is there something beyond that in terms of detail, in terms of experience, that this work opens up? Something that may possibly be, one might be able to kind of reflect on it as one is doing the work, but kind of when one is reflecting back on a longer body of projects, one might be able to articulate that. So is there something that is emerging in, because I mean those structures, the expression of structure, material, and program was evocative. And I think Dushyant was kind of alluding to that. So analytically, does this do something more? Because the title of your talk also kind of alluded to this. And my second point was, what might happen if instead of uh, I mean, like you presented first uh, a historical overview of mass production, standardization versus artisanal production and craft, kind of a fairly well-known history. If one kind of thinks through the talk, not in these two parts, but in talking about mass production and artisanal production or crafting and standardization, as one discusses the project itself, how might we be able to change that narrative? So these are my 2 points, whether there is a possibility.
No, I see. The thing is, you're right, and think about it. There's a personal difficulty here that I want to restrain myself to getting into phenomenological description, because I want to remain very close to something which is tangible. Um, though my interests are there, I do not want to reveal it. And this is a conscious um, decisions, or conscious attempt I have been doing since many years. And including in studios as well. Once somebody does concept, I would not spend too much time on that and get into this, because I have not been able to decipher um, the underlying structure of experience. And because I have not been able to do it, you can keep writing about it. Okay, so perhaps what you pointed out, that relook at this relationship and try and see, could sort of anchor it. But I'm very careful not to put it, because, as I said, that when I was a student, you felt misleading discussions going on, okay, which you cannot relate, you cannot anchor it, and so you become very careful. I'm very careful to put something which I think is possible to sort of discuss, um, because the phenomenological frame or the framework of experience, yes, I mean, say some of the things one is doing is to think. I have not put some of the some. There are a few more works which I could have put, um, because those work I'm conceiving as a type, and then anchoring it to structure and sort of construction. In my imagination, there is a thought on how the darkness would sort of um, build into that space, and how less light you need. Okay, but then I can't explain why you are doing it. So I'm very, there is something going on in my mind, okay, but because there is no, I can't put a structure to it, I don't speak. So to respond to that, this is what is going on truthfully. But what you have said, I'll think about it, and that is why I separated it out.
With your provocation on the detail of life becoming an entry point to think about drawing an experience, like drawing out something which is the drawing out of life in detail vis-a-vis the exploration itself, and something that could be pursued as an exploration, as a reflection, but also an exploration beyond the completion of the project itself. That it may not be apparent while designing it, but one might be able to, in reflection, be able to think through things that one may have observed, notes that one may have made, reflections that one may have had to kind of build on this. So I'm not kind of getting into the intangible kind of, but with your own provocation on the detail of life.
Hi. I had, I mean, this is two related questions, something, also connected to what Rohit was talking about. So the two sections, that he presented, the first part is about the mastery, right? And the second part about, the kind of projects you showed, which is to do with, largely sort of finished work, right? And in the title, you sort of talk about the pedagogy of the everyday, and so also reminded me of, the Russian constructivist uh, artworks about the whole idea of looking at objects as, sort of comrades of the everyday, in the sense of you're not necessarily want a mastery of it, but you're working with, bamboo and the material to create everyday things. And I was wondering, if the kind of project shift to the experiments or the things that you're working with bamboo that don't necessarily finish, do they allow you to have a different relationship in the idea of what technology is, in the sense of that it's not, might not necessarily be, getting a mastery to put a structure together, but working with bamboo to do other things. So I was wondering if, are there other kinds of projects which don't necessarily end up where, like architecturally, the structures, but like you're working with bamboo and their different relationship opens up in the everyday of, what technology really is.
Well, um, I would say that there are two ways to look at it, or two ways I have tried. One way is that material is properties, and when you shift from timber, which has its disposition, to the one like steel, where you measure it, you created it. Okay. You are trying to make a material of the desired property you need. Steel is a desired property which we need. That's why we have steel of various categories. When you are physically working with material, it's a different experience. When we are not physically working with material, then it's a different experience. Now, bamboo, for example, or any, or let's say later on when we did steel. So one way to conceive it is to always look at from the structural process and to see what new diagrams are possible. And so materials adapt to that diagram, which is a way which I try. The but for bamboo, I have done lots of students workshop, lots. I don't now remember how much I have done. In every project, I have tried to push to do something different than the other. Because for me, it has given me an R&D for which I don't have money. So the pure tensile structure came when I did my first MSU workshop, in which a very good artist, um, he invited me to do it. So that was where I first tried using splits. Okay, and that was an experiment. Okay, I got little confidence about it. Then I moved to the next stage and I did something else. So many of these experiments I have done in bamboo has resulted into this. The same does not apply for steel because steel is far more measurable. I don't need to do so much experiment in sort of steel to sort of do that. So, so yes, there are a lot of experiments which I have not put up here, uh, including now I have worked on develop with a couple of friends to develop standardized fastener system for splits in India, which we are trying to file some intellectual property related stuff which could be open. Um, I don't know whether we'll get it or not, and we are further working on other dimensions of it. For a different reason is that Indian bamboo species is not straight all the time. So either you can wait for another 30 years for introduce variety, or you can get standardized split sections which you start working in various ways. And my larger idea was that, okay, how do you respond to your time? Because even Louis Kahn and all of those, or let's say Kobe, all were responding to their time, whether you like it or not. We are responding to a time where we have to respond to density, we have to respond to environment, etc. And so my pragmatic position is, how do you mix industrial and natural material? Because that's the immediate thing we can do for next 30, 40 years, because we can't go extreme ways. It's extremely violent to go extreme ways. Okay, so so that has happened with working with material, and some of the other thing has happened by approaching it through structure. So so I would say both are relevant, and both gives interesting outcomes. But for this occasion, I have not showed, because I really didn't think the way you thought about it.
Hello. Yeah. Any question? Sorry. Yeah, I think I will thank Sankalpa for this very interesting, and every time I like the clarity with which you speak, and you are focused about your research work and doesn't get diverted with this lot of other things, and always very focused on what you want to achieve. It's a very interesting and very difficult for me to think through. Yeah. Uh, Thank you everyone to join this, and we will see you next in the C conversation, which will be on 2nd of February, and we have with us Afra Aisman, and during the talk, she will take us through her recent exhibition, a use of a craft techniques for storytelling and amplification of voices and understanding of the feminist years through the practice of making soft sculpture and weaving different words. So this conversation will be online on Zoom platform, and we will share the links in a due course of a time. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.